Welcome to another episode of my podcast, and as always, my regular listeners will know I'm always delighted to have my guest on, and today is no different. Today I have the wonderful, brilliant, effervescent, charming Imogen McCourt, who is Revenue Enablement Leader and Advocate, Orchestra NED, delivering transformations with measurable outcomes and commercial growth. That's what her LinkedIn profile says. At the Economist Group, and also hot off the press, she is being moved up to the board of the Sales Enablement Society. So many congratulations, Imogen. The title of today's podcast is "What Does Sales Enablement Mean?" And without further ado, I always start with Imogen: a who, what, why, when, where, and let's see what multiple rabbit holes this takes today.
Oh, thanks, Alex. That's a very glowing introduction. I hope I live up to it in this conversation.
You will do. So I know you will do. Our conversations are always awesome. And so I'll go back to it again. Who, what, why, when, where? What's your story? And then let's see where this goes.
Yes. So I, as you said, I'm at the Economist Group. I am sort of slightly, if you can be a sales enablement geek, I probably am a sales enablement geek. I have never worked for a SaaS company, although I've consulted for some. So I think I bring a slightly interesting angle on this in terms of sales enablement for non-technology companies. There's not many of us out there, and certainly not many of us in Europe as well. But for me, the problems are the same, siloed organizations, lost sight of where cost of sale is actually driving a difference, and ultimately the thing everybody wants to understand: how do you get to truly profitable growth and sustain that and scale that? So it doesn't matter whether you're in tech or not. I think there's some really interesting things to discuss. And really quickly, fell into sales enablement. I know many people sort of said we were doing sales enablement before it was called sales enablement. I fell into sales enablement possibly the first time it was ever called sales enablement. So I was working at Forrester Research. Forrester had Scott Santucci and lots of fantastic people there writing about this for our clients at that point in time, who were tech and a lot of SaaS as well. And so they felt as an organization we really ought to do sales enablement as well as just tell other people to do it. And so I'd just been part of led on building out their global sales process restructure. So they said, well, why don't you do this? That seemed to go all right. We're making money, do the next big thing. So they gave me, as is also classic, some people who were in the sales training organization, fortunately, incredibly talented people who could be pushed and stretched. And think about it, I had half an FTE from finance. That's how ops was considered at that time. And this is like 2007. And then massive global financial economic crisis occurred. Forrester is a research organization, and we grew double-digit growth. So something about the enablement work that we were doing and the way we were working together clearly was resonating and making a difference for our salespeople. So there you go. I've not a nutshell, but there's a bit of that for you.
A coconut shell, maybe, into
a coconut shell, yeah.
Sorts of things. So fascinating. I think it's always good that you get people from outside of kind of the standards route into any role, because it brings a different perspective. And of course, when one thinks of sales enablement, the default is it's born out of the tech sector. However, I 100% agree with you. I believe that the means, the processes, the outcomes are relevant to any industry. And if reflecting on kind of where it's come as a journey, you yourself, you mentioned it's kind of was born out of the research that Forrester was doing at the time. We have RevOps, we have Sales Ops, we have varying iterations of it. And we had the get together the other couple of weeks ago, the first one in person for the Sales Enablement Society, which was raucous good fun, should I say. But I think we had some really interesting debate and conversations from many practitioners from many different industries, primarily within the tech space, let's be honest. But I feel that there is are we at an inflection point around what does sales enablement actually mean today versus where it's come from? And you mentioned sales training as the people that you were kind of given straight out the gate, because I feel that it may be still seen as it's a training, coaching, kind of back officey thing that can get in the way of sellers and
Mhm.
sales.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I should say, yes, it was one of those lovely evenings where people were so excited to get back together again. I think we had 46 people actually showed, wine was taken, and passions run high. But what was lovely about it, and for me, before I get to your specific question, one of the things that sales enablement means is we are creating a discipline or an approach or an idea, and it's still forming, and it should remain plastic and agile to the needs of the company that it's working within, or the market, more importantly, and the customers you're trying to engage with. But to say sales enablement is training does a massive disservice, to our L&D colleagues, but also to what you're able to achieve with really beautiful, great orchestrated enablement. It's we talk about the pillars of people, process, content, and technology, but you can't force those into their own silos. It's finding a way to see the holistic view of where you're going, even if you have to break down a problem into small pieces and then put them back together again over 18 months. And for me, sales enablement is like the invisible sticky glue that keeps everything together towards that common aim or goal. And I started this by saying best use of cost of sale, driving predictable, profitable growth. So then, okay, that's really, really big picture. Break it down, look at where that is or isn't playing in an organization, what is or isn't working, and find a way to bring people together to fix it. Don't be enablement fixes it. Enablement is driving the people together, and then there's ownership and it stays fixed. Before I was at The Economist, I had a company called A Rising Tide lifts all ships. And what I basically say to people is, and this sounds ridiculous, but it's been Mother's Day recently, so I'll say it, it's a little bit like Nanny McPhee. When you join, and I always join Greenfield, right? They're at a tipping point, they haven't had enablement, but something's not right, or it's hard, or they've had investment and they need to try and deliver on that investment promise, or a new CEO who wants to shift things. If you haven't got that revenue enablement and operations structure in place, then it's just heroic effort by individuals and it doesn't fly, and they don't know that other people are doing the same thing. So they're in silos. So enablement is about bringing the transparency, bringing people together, helping them understand a commonality of growth aim. It's not about corporate strategy, really. It's about executing on corporate strategy in that market. And then filling in the gaps, like making it client first if it needs to be client first, stopping this. Well, you'll have seen it as well, Alex, right? Let's do some fantastic social selling. Brilliant. Here's some stuff to say on LinkedIn. And then the salespeople are like, what? Yeah. And or go and find 1,000 CMOs and tell them some stuff about your company. You do not get the outcome that you really positively are hoping are going to happen there unless somebody says, okay, end to end, why CMOs? What's interesting? What are they struggling with right now? And that's enabling us to get to a better selling environment working with those CMOs. I don't think you can define it, enablement. In fact, the Sales Enablement Society, like many other people, tried to. And I would say it was the most contentious thing that we ever did, because nobody owns enablement. We don't own what it is, but we should be able to say, define it for a positive outcome, not a negative, you don't have it piece. And I'm sorry, because I'm talking a lot here, but just recently I heard about this salesperson who turned down the job that he'd been offered because they didn't have an enablement organization, and he was not going to go into that company without knowing that that was established and good. And I think we're starting to be understood as a powerful outcome and a powerful reason for good. Defining us as an enablement or as a discipline or as a professional is really hard. I mean, tell me your thoughts, because you've lived through this as well. How do you say this is what sales enablement means?
Well, I love talking to you because you're so eloquent with your words, and I love if we pick up on, I will answer your question, but just reflect on kind of what you said, that holistic end goal of what we're actually trying to achieve here, and that it's the invisible glue that kind of sticks this all together. And it's almost it's a bit like if you've ever been to a fine dining, Michelin-starred restaurant, where the waiting staff, you don't know they're there, but they're there, and everything just works in harmony and unison, just because everyone knows exactly what their role is and when to do it. And so you just have, as the diner, and that could be the seller or the client, you just have this immaculate experience because it's just all happening around you. And I think that's probably how, that's just come to my head, how I might describe enablement, is that you're there in the background and you are enabling the outcome to happen. And it's almost you should be just there quietly and not necessarily front of mind, but that you need to be able to flex and react to wherever the kind of the business challenge might be. To your point, the elasticity of it and the flex of it, because everyone's going to be different. Every seller is going to be different in terms of where they are on the journey, and people need to learn and being able through different learning mechanisms. That's also been scientifically proven, which then actually reflects on the article that Brent Adamson wrote at the beginning of whenever it was, 23, possibly last year, 2022, around sales and marketing is becoming obsolete. And then he did a expose on Jenna Pipchuk, who recently has moved on from the technology company that she implemented this at. But again, just when I talked to her, she described this elasticity of the sales process and redesign their entire sales and marketing function to operate in this liquid way, that you move up and down the process rather than having these defined handover points from SDR to BDR to AE or what have you. And it's kind of, once you've gone through that gate, you can't really go backwards. And kind of Jenna's viewpoint was, of course you can go backwards through that gate if that's what the client wants to do in terms of the buying experience. So
if I may, and I'm just going to move past the question I asked you because you've just made me think about a million other things as well. So I talk about the industrialization of the sales process sometimes. So you think about, and this sounds linear, and the sales process should never be linear. It's an infinity symbol if you ask me. But anyway, so you have sort of BDR, SDR, account manager or account executive, and then senior, and then global, and so on and so on, and or negotiation or deal architect or whatever you want to. The roles have become more specific and more defined, but at every stage where you create a sort of a definitive handoff moment is an opportunity for your pipeline to leak, or is an opportunity for learning to be lost. And I think that it's great. It drives cost out of your sales process. And if you've got the frameworks and the structures, everybody knows exactly what they're doing when, that's perfect. And I love your restaurant analogy, because it should feel like you, the customer, you, the salesperson, are being loved and looked after. But it should also feel like enablement is just one step ahead. So you come to something and you're like, oh my God, I've never seen that before. I've never come up against that competitor, or I've never heard that problem before. You should be able to go back to your sales enablement and ops team, and they'll be like, oh yeah, don't worry, we've got your back. We knew that might be or we thought about that. And to go full circle what you said, not only that, some of our salespeople want to learn kinetically, right? They want to do some role play, they want to try it out, they want to do that sort of thing. Some of them want to read it, some of them want to watch it. And so the sales enablement team can pick up on those incredible training and curriculum design elements to make sure that this lands and embeds in that person's moment. You know, not, oh, brilliant, got an idea, come into this training room next Thursday and we'll talk to you about it. You know, either, yeah, your sales manager has got some stuff on that, you can talk about it in deal review, or I can help you right now. What exactly is your problem? Why? And then actually get to the crux of it. So that's where the sort of adult learning, the own your own success part of this is. You know, we're not enabling you to find crappy resources and bad content. We're empowering you to go off and say, I can sell better. I will be able to own my number and my target with these things in place. Oh, look, enablement has already thought about that. And ops is showing you how it's made a difference or not. And we'll keep doing that. So that's the fluidity. I think that helps as well.
My brain has just jumped straight to tech and Spotify, but I'm not going to yet. I'm going to come back to so there's a lot here already going on. I know we could talk for hours on this, but what, notwithstanding that, you know, the roles are defined, but if for our listeners, they're thinking about, to your point, we need to start doing this, need to start making this more of a defined thing, although we agree that you can't really define what it is. Are there fundamentals that you need in place from kind of people or roles or skill sets at that very basic level to kind of start to lay the foundations for this?
So if you're laying the foundations, if you're greenfielding, which is generally where I have, well, my career has taken me, honestly, it's very different to if you are at a different place in your maturity curve. I would say there are accelerator moments in the sales enablement sort of maturity curve, but let's park that for now, because you're right, this is one of those conversations that just get bigger and bigger, and boiling the ocean helps nobody, right? So I would say the first thing you do if you go in as a head of sales enablement, or because you start to think about shaping the space where sales enablement ought to be, is to think about where the friction points are between departments, or the blockers or friction for your customers and prospects. And I say that with purpose. I think it gets said a lot, but it's so powerful. Our salespeople will tell us, oh, marketing aren't giving me enough leads, or I'm not getting the right content, or my product doesn't fly, or whatever. And they're not that they are false reasonings. It's just that those things are true because of something that's happening outside of your organization, not because of your marketing people like to sit around doing a bad job and they don't want to give you any leads. That's just nonsense. Everybody's in there with positive intent. So it's that there's something's changed, or you need to think about what's happening in your market, and then think about whether the way you sell is really differentiating you in the market. I would love to say that the perfect product exists and it walk off the shelves and all of that. We don't need salespeople. It doesn't. And so, but perhaps the way you're selling doesn't fit, or the process stages for them to buy have become different or elongated. You need to start to understand that. So an enablement person needs to go past the noise that they're hearing internally, have the confidence and the credibility to say, this is the way I'm going to move this problem forward, but I'm not going to do it in a day, and I will get to your problems, but we go outside in first. So they need to have that sort of gentle but credible leadership piece. They need to be able to see the client perspective in everything, because when companies are getting complicated or numbers are tanking, we tend to double down on what we can control internally, activities, pipeline reporting, etc., etc. No, it's fine, I understand it, but that's not the problem. The problem is those activities aren't doing what they were doing before, aren't driving the changes that we need them to do before. So there is something about having a logical and ordered brain, although if you lifted my head, you'd see about 700 mind maps playing out. So I'm not sure how I fit into that. Perhaps the ability to have lots of moving pieces at all times is a really valuable thing. And then if enablement is going to drive profitable growth, like if that's what the look is, or if you want to, you're struggling to open a market, whatever it is, think about what that big corporate goal is, and then back it down into work streams. And that's another skill set, right? To actually be able to back things down into work streams and get everybody bought into how that might change their lives, change their approach to things. The very first time I did this, I hadn't anticipated how exposing it would be to actually be able to track influence on a sales process or influence on a renewal process. And so people who really thought they were doing incredible work and really passionate about their work were achieving nothing, made no difference to conversion rates, or it didn't accelerate, or it didn't grow deal size. And I sort of blindly rocked up with my spreadsheets and my pie charts and my, value, volume, velocity work, at Scott Santucci's knee. And they were like, but I'm working really hard, and I love my job. Oh, no. So enablement also has to sort of find someone who genuinely is driven by other people's success, because if you're driven by your own success, you'll last a couple of months, 18 months, and then you'll walk out because you're not able to get everybody to do what you need them to do. I feel like I'm doing another rambling big conversation, and I want to know why you asked about Spotify. But but if I was to get enablement nailed down, don't assume you can find one person who can do everything. Don't do that awful job description, which is, incredibly influential at a senior level, deep data science capabilities to use Excel spreadsheets, credible with your sales organization, 3 to 5 years experience, £60,000, right? It's just a nonsense, and those roles are everywhere. You need to think about somebody who can collaborate with commercial teams and make that make sense, and then the building blocks of structure and process and framework. Yes, training and curriculum design, but not trainers, people who think about human behavior. And then the ops team are essential. I can't believe we didn't like force that into my team in Forrester many years ago, because they show you whether it's working and how it's working and what you should think about investing. So I hope I brought it back a little bit at the end to be a bit more specific.
Absolutely. I think, loads of kind of insight and nuggets there. And what, again, reflecting on I think this comes full circle back to there is no kind of one size fits all for enablement in terms of that definition piece, but it's what you said at the top in terms of you've got to cut through the noise, not accept what you're being told to be true, and look for those friction points and look for why those friction points are happening, and then start to fix them, which then comes back to the analogy of then you're fixing something that's broken. You are the invisible glue that is helping this all come together. And like 1 week it could be one thing, and you fix that bit, which then causes something to happen over there, right, in terms of the process. And the other points around people do generally want to try to help want to help the organizations that to be successful, and typically are going to be working kind of very hard in terms of what they're trying to do. But to your point, the market changes, the way people buy changes, the economics change, and therefore you have to change and flex what you're doing, which then does, dare I say it, come full circle maybe back to some of the behaviors of leaders who only know one way to be true, and then trying to move that mindset in terms of getting the leaders to buy into, you want to get the team to think and do differently. And I will come to the Spotify bit in a minute. I do believe that this is where we're seeing technology today, is that each seller is different, and to your point about their learning style. Therefore, what one way, one process that works for one seller might not necessarily be able to take that cookie cutter approach and then work for another seller, just in terms of the nature of kind of who they are and how they operate. Which then comes to the technology piece, and we're going to go down the AI route because we can't not go down the AI route. And you got me thinking when you were talking about that enablement should be one step ahead, so that when a comes up against a problem they haven't encountered before, there's already, I'm going to call it a playbook, a methodology, a thing to help kind of answer that question. And when you were talking to that, you got me reflecting of how certainly Spotify and other platforms work around the way it serves you songs and albums,
right?
Different interests based on kind of what you're doing. And like, I would never have, a lot of the music I listen to now, back in the days when we went to HMV and got our CDs, for those of us who remember what CDs are, and put them into our Discmans, disc, if you went down that route, you kind of only went to what whereas what the likes of Spotify can now do is kind of open your mind to different genres, different music tastes, and different styles. And I feel, and feel free to challenge me, both you and anybody listening in the comments on this, that there is technology today, and we have the technical ability to be able to serve that knowledge and that insight to sellers in an almost, like, use the word carefully, predictive, but certainly on-demand way to help guide them. And if we think around where Microsoft is now going with Copilot, but even, and Salesforce with Einstein and Google with Bard and yada yada yada, but even before then, it's Microsoft was sharing me that Teams today, you've got their customer virtual agent. So you could be an insurance person, and you're talking to me, Imogen, and then you mentioned you're going on holiday, and then Teams will hear that, and AI will spin up in the chat box. They said holiday, you need to now sell this, or think think about this. This is all eminently possible today, notwithstanding generative AI, Chat GPT-4 and Copilot and. But where can technology and that sort of thing play into this?
Oh my God, I'm just starting to scratch the surface of this. So bear with me if I have a slightly naive response to it, but I'm very, very excited about what's coming. And I think that's because every time over the last 20 years there's been a new technology development, there's been a new way to think about something. And so this is another chance to bring another set of approaches and tools and ideas into to the table and to the salespeople, but also to your customers and their buying journey, right? If we can truly predict what they're going to need next, because part of this is sort of emotional attachment and the art of selling, but there's so much that's the science of selling. Well, you know, if we talk about the industrialization of sales, the industrial revolution brought machines, right? We started to do the repetitive tasks that people didn't want to do, that didn't add an awful lot of value but were necessary, became machine-led, right? Well, there will be areas all over the way we engage or manage or serve our customers and make sure they get what they need in a timely fashion that we shouldn't have people doing. In fact, people would slow it down or, God forbid, go on holiday or do whatever, right? We can make sure they're getting what they need in the right fashion. So if you think about it, and this isn't me being clever, but if you think about it as augmented intelligence, then you've got great, smart, brilliant people from the buyer side and from the let's call them vendors, but it's a horrible term, coming together to try and achieve something. Well, let's make that as easy as possible. Let's get every friction point that we can removed. Let's make it automated for emails. That's so old now, right? But let's make sure sequences make sense, and if the person doesn't like them, stop them, or if they love picking up the phone, let's do that. And that's just a really basic version of what the potential is for this now. If you can sense that a person is using mainly sight words, I see, I saw, let me, or if they're using like, I would love to hear about that. Those things, you can change speech patterns. You can help bring people together and just have that behind the scenes meeting of mind, right? It's scary in the level of manipulation you have the capability to do, but it's incredible in the fact that on the whole, people have got great products or solutions and people have problems. Just make it easier for those things to come together. So yeah, I'm naive about all of the different possibilities for it right now, but I'm excited and open to how we might bring that, as long as it's really well enabled into the seller's hands and it's actually adopted and it's actually understood in the moment, not just here is a way to automate something. Great, thanks. But what? That doesn't help anybody. Really, truly might be you're incredible at conversations where you have to build a vision on something. So let's focus you there. That our augmented intelligence platforms show us that you missed these 3 questions. So here they are. Let's just make sure they get asked properly. Brilliant, right? A brilliant experience for everybody. So, I think my slightly naive, it goes beyond you listen to this, so you're probably going to like this as well. It goes beyond the people like you bought this, but that is the fundamentals beneath it as well, isn't it? It's just moving you in the right direction on it. It's not talking to my husband about how to unblock his ear and then I get an advert for it. That just drives me insane. It's much more about, perhaps oversharing, but it's much more about what do our sellers need and where can I drive cost out of the sales process with the automated renewal clients and accounts who don't want to talk to a salesperson. They'll just accept their 10% 10% price rise, not to have to talk to a salesperson and negotiate it down, and drive any of those savings into the big, meaty, enterprise, long sales processes and make sure that they're successful too. So there you go.
A great answer, and I agree. I believe we are at a fascinating turning point around all, because there's lots of technology that does, coaching in terms of listening to sales conversations. You can pick out sentiment and keywords and all this kind of stuff. But I feel, again, this is me on the outside looking in, that these kind of things looked in isolation rather than lifting it up and looking at it holistically, but also on the the predictive piece, I think, is an interesting one, and certainly anybody that's using Sales Navigator Advanced or Advanced Plus will see the intent data that's now starting to come into that. But reminds me of a conversation with the former CMO of IBM many moons ago when they were trying to do a customer journey, and they wanted to kind of redo the website, but the website, it was IBM website, massive website. And she said, in her particular vision, one of the sellers said, well, why we know what we sell to our clients day in, day out. We know what are the entry products because we sell them. And then we also know what they then typically go on to buy from those entry products and the timeframes within which it takes from that to happen to be then typically 3 months they do this, 6 months they do this, 9 months they might do this, and 12 months they might do this. So why don't we just focus on the website journey that's related to this anchor product, if you will, service. Mm-hmm. And then we know that 3 months after this, we need to start marketing this. And then 6 months, we need to start marketing this. And this is then when we need to pick up the phone. And because we've already got this data in our CRM system, we already have this in terms of our finance system, in terms of invoices going out the door to clients. And this was back, I think it was 2015, 2016, when I remember this roundtable. You fast forward that to today, and to your point around the technology that is now available to help augment this and help you kind of think differently about this in real time. This is the insanity of it. You can do things in real time, and yes, absolutely, we should be freeing up sellers to do what sellers are good at, which is having conversations, right, with people. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. I know, I love that, right? Because that's gone back to our just be one step ahead, and then it feels so valuable, right? You know, whether you're in a beautiful dining experience and your glass is empty, right? Just be ready to pour the wine, or if you know that the customer life cycle always goes this entry product, this next step, this problem suddenly occurs, and not with what you're delivering, but with the company who are now doing something slightly different. Just the AI can feed that through to you, and you're like a savior, because you're going to say to them, you know, in a few weeks' time, you're probably going to want to think about X. You know, just let me know, and I'll make sure we're ready. What sort of value is that? That's incredible. Why would you go anywhere else? And that's when you have that sort of that trusted relationship, because it's done with you and for you as a salesperson or an account manager, whatever that looks like. The client experiences something extraordinary, and then they phone you up and say, I don't know, I know you're at the Economist, Imogen, but do you have any idea about, you know, how Google is going to be able to do X in the future? And you're like, well, no, but you trust me, and I will think about this, and I will try and get back to you. It's amazing how those sorts of things can just, that word nudge, right? The next best thing, or the nudge that just keeps the relationship fresh, and spending proper money. There's some fantastic charts about NPS and customer satisfaction and account level growth. Imagine if you also know the next best product to put there, or the next best service to put into it too. I think it's fantastic.
It is. It's exciting times, and I think the way that, you know, you phrased that last bit in terms of, you know, you're probably going to start thinking about, or you may start thinking about this in a couple of weeks. Here's some collateral. It starts to create a better relationship with marketing, because then they're starting to feel the value, or the fact that if you reflect on, I think I haven't read the book, but I'm going to Matt Dixon's Jolt Effect, that most deals stall because of indecision.
Yes.
Rather than there's no buyer, they just stall because nothing happens. You've got all this insight and knowledge as to what deals succeed and why. So replicate that, but with the language in terms of typically your customers think and feel this at this moment. That's okay. This is the next best step that you need to take. And imagine if you'll then serve that by AI, and then crikey, you look at the world of generative AI, you look at videos like, you know, platforms like Synthesia, where you can start to do this at scale with avatars. So you can skinny yourself up this way in terms of you're just dropping the kind of the video templates into a cadence or a sequence, and then you draw in the salesperson at the right time. I think it's really it's amazingly exciting. But before we can
I say one last thing on this, because these are, as you say, these are hugely interesting concepts, and how do you think about making ready for that? So I would say practically right now, what I will be focusing on in the next few months, and I'm not going to say what I'm doing right now, is the building blocks of this. So really clear customer segmentation, whatever that looks like for your business, but make sure it's about potential spend, not just market cap. And sequence of events, right? As you said, you've got incredible salespeople who could, in that IBM conversation, who could tell you what the next product was going to be and the next thing that they would be pitching, because it would make sense. That mutual sequence of events is an incredible tool anyway, but get it really, really, really finely mapped out with your lovely humans and your lovely clients they built incredible relationships with. And then you can start to see, okay, when we start to think about or invest or understand how we as a company are going to use AI, you've got your building blocks. You've got these big spend clients or these minimum margin clients. You've got the amount of time and effort and sequences of things that have to occur with those over time. Well, then perhaps that gives you a playground to put the AI capabilities into.
Well, you've just ended this podcast absolutely brilliantly and eloquently without me having to tee you up to do so. So thank you. We've covered a lot in here, but there's so much more to do. So if people want to learn more about the Sales Enablement Society, can they reach out to you? Can we point to the website? What's the best way for people to do that, to come and be part of this community, to help shape the future of all of this?
Yes. So the more the merrier. This, as I said at the outset, this is, well, it's fun. This is a fun thing to be part of. There's usually wine if you want it, and there's definitely food. And you get a chance to have a voice, right? Nobody owns Sales Enablement. Nobody owns the Sales Enablement Society. We spin through so everybody can have a voice in it. But yeah, probably find me on LinkedIn to start with. There's a few other names, or Alex, I'm sure they can connect with you as well if they haven't already, and that will point them at me and the other people who are leading it in the UK. And for people in other countries, there are chapters all over the world. So, you know, it's a global excitement. There's a lot of us interested in this.
It's a global excitement. Or
oh my God.
I thought, I could see some starlings out here. So maybe it's a global murmuration.
Yeah.
Sales enablement people flying around the world. I'll put the stuff in the comments on the YouTube channel. I'll put it in the body. The links will be in the body of the text for the podcast. But Imogen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for affording your busy schedule to come and share your knowledge and your insight.
Alex, I absolutely love your podcast and what you do, so it's been a real pleasure to be part of one of them. Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much to my listeners for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. Without you, this would be for nothing. But if you've learned some things, you want to add some things, put them in the comments, DM me, DM Imogen. Well worth being part of this conversation. But until next time, I will see you all on the flip side.